Welcome back, everyone. And now for the final talk of the day, we have Craig Morrison with us. Craig is a principal designer at Blizzard Entertainment, and he's going to give a very interesting talk about how we can collaborate better with others and take personal responsibility for doing so. Without further ado, Craig, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. Hello, welcome from sunny California this morning. We actually had some rain yesterday, which is like super rare for us. It's like there's only two things living in California that Twitter tells you about faster are earthquakes and rain. You tend to know when those two things happen instantly. But today we have some sun. So welcome. As mentioned, my name is Craig Morrison. I'm a principal designer at Blizzard Entertainment. I've been in the industry for almost 20 years now. Like many, I started as a gaming journalist at IGN and then joined Funcom, similar to Andreas, who was the previous presenter. And I worked on various massively multiplayer online games at Funcom, Anarchy Online, Age of Conan, and The Secret World. And I worked in various roles, ultimately becoming game director and a creative director for the company's studio in Montreal. And then 8 years ago, I moved to Blizzard Entertainment here in California to work on World of Warcraft. And I have been doing that since, originally as a design. A year and a half, 2 years as a principal designer, working on the new expansions that we've launched, the most recent that we launched at the end of last year, Shadowlands. And today, I want to talk a bit about creativity and how we collaborate and how we come together as human beings to do this very hard thing that is making games. Anyone who's done it will tell you that making games is actually pretty difficult most of the time. It's a joy and it's amazing. But it can be hard work. And a lot of that hard work is to do with human interaction. We have to collaborate to make things. And as someone who's been a creative leader on various teams of various sizes, I've worked on teams as small as like 5 or 8 people, all the way up to, the 300 plus massive teams that we had on Age of Conan or on World of Warcraft. And in doing so, I've thought a lot about creativity and how we collaborate and how people kind of come together to talk in a creative setting. Like, how do we actually function? And as I thought about it more and more, and I did presentations like this, I came to a theory or a way of thinking about our creativity, that each of us has this creative battery inside of us. It provides us our energy. It's what we draw on when we get inspired. It's what gets filled up when we see something that inspires us, when we play a game that we like, or we read a book that captivates us, or we watch a movie, that's amazing and inspire, or whatever we do. Our batteries kind of get charged by those things. And then when we have to do the hard work, when we're doing the labor of making games, that battery gets sapped. It gets, the energy gets pulled out and we use it and we expend it. And we have to, kind of make sure that we maintain our batteries levels. Our motivations are one of the most important things that we have as human beings. And when you are motivated and inspired, and this creative battery, this metaphorical battery that you have inside you is fully charged or well charged, the work is easy. We've all been in that. We get in that flow state. We're working. We love what we're doing. But then by the same token, when that battery gets drained or is low on reserves, the work becomes even harder. And it becomes even more of a challenge. And you kind of get in those places where it's like, man, wow, this is hard work. I don't know how I can do this. Or you start to, maybe lose your motivation for the task at hand. So what I want to talk today a bit about is how that works and how we charge that battery and how we drain it and what we can do as individuals. Because at a top level, really the TLDR, as it were, the too long didn't read of this entire presentation can be summed up to one simple practice that if you remember nothing else about this talk, and we're going to go through some cool steps of how to do it practically, but if you remember nothing else, I want you to remember this next part. And that's making games or any creative endeavor. This isn't just relevant to making games. This is relevant to life, honestly, and anything where you interact with other human beings. Every interaction that we have with another human being can charge or sap that proverbial battery. And on a personal level, what I want all of you to think about as we talk through this presentation is, how do your actions impact upon other human beings, upon other creative individuals that you're working with? Whether you're talking to them in a meeting, or whether you're brainstorming, or whether you're talking to them about challenges or problems, the interaction that you had with them or with a group, did it charge their batteries or did it sap them? Because we all know deep down, personally, like I know if I finish an interaction with a person, oh man, I feel worse after that conversation. Or, oh wow, cool, that was amazing, that charged me, I feel better. And at a simple level, if each of us, in every interaction that we have with another developer, if we constantly have in the back of our mind, wait, am I charging their batteries or am I sapping their batteries? You'll find that you naturally start to migrate to more positive behaviors that are more conducive to creating a cool, creative, collaborative space where people feel comfortable collaborating. So the concept, it's simple. It sounds easy when I say this, right? Yeah, I just be good, be nice, basically. How am I doing this? But as always, the devil is in the details, and how do we actually do it? How do we turn this into a reality? How do we make this happen in our day-to-day? And we don't do these things alone. We're always, as a games maker, unless you're like the super hardcore indie person who is, a hermit off on their own, doing their own thing, and they're doing all the sound and all the music and all the engineering and all the design. That's cool, but that's very rare these days. If you're making a game, even in a small team, you're working with other people. And I want to draw a couple of distinctions for vocabulary and language as I talk about this. Collaboration is very important to me, and it's kind of at the core root of everything we're going to talk about today in these 5 steps. And I want to draw the difference between collaboration and cooperation. Cooperation kind of happens by default. Most of us do that. We come in, we're working with, if you're a designer, you're working with engineers or artists, or if you're an artist, maybe you're working with a tech artist, and we're all working with people and we're cooperating. Most developers can cooperate at a functional level kind of inherently. It doesn't take too much work. You understand that you need other people to do the job. Genuinely collaborating with another person and getting the most out of these creative relationships, that requires trust. It requires that you build a level of trust with the other developers. And trust, as we all know from our personal lives, trust is notoriously hard to build, really difficult sometimes, and exceptionally easy to destroy or lose. One mistake, one slip can often damage trust and even destroy it in the worst cases. So a lot of what we're going to be talking today is about how we do that. And a lot of the time, these kind of talks, and I've been guilty of this myself in the past, kind of focus on kind of enterprise level solutions to this, or structural or company culture. And those things are valid. They're all interesting topics that you could do completely standalone talks on. How do I create a corporate culture that supports collaboration? Or how do I structure a team that supports creative collaboration? All of those things are valid. Today, I kind of want to talk to you about personal responsibility. This is about the things that you can do day to day, minute to minute, meeting to meeting, that can kind of elevate your creative collaboration and make it a lot more meaningful, both for yourself and for the people that you're working with. Okay, so let's dive right in on the first of the 5 steps. And I call this one, Take It Out of the Arena. This is some key art from one of our World of Warcraft expansions. And, it's in the name, Warcraft. We're all about conflict and battle. But when it comes to creative discussions and collaborating with other people, the first most important thing to do is take it out of the arena. It's not a conflict. Oftentimes you hear, people using creative language to discuss how they're interacting with other people in a very confrontational tone. Oh, this is a hill I'll die on. This is a battle I want to win. We're framing it as war. We're framing it as conflict, that my idea must win, that my thoughts must come out on top. And over time, that's a pretty toxic way to try and present ideas that you actually want to benefit from other people on. So I prefer to look at it from another point of view of one of the things that I think games like World of Warcraft and MMOs in general are really good at. It shouldn't be a fight with your team. This picture screenshot here is a guild in Classic, kind of having taken down Ragnaros, one of the first big raid bosses we ever put into World of Warcraft, where, these 40 people have to come together using a synergy of their abilities to kind of take down the big bad boss. And that's much more about how we should think about creative collaboration in a team setting for me. Getting the most out of all of the individuals around you, how to support them, how to organize, how to work. And we're all working towards a common goal, right? We want to release that game. We want to make that movie, write that book, whatever we're doing. We want to make it happen together. And making games, as I said at the top, is hard enough as it is. There's going to be a whole bunch of external challenges, whether it's resources or time or money or how difficult the thing is that you're trying to make. You can make that a lot easier by not having as much internal conflict. So everyone should be kind of invested in not making it competitive, not making it a conflict, but rather thinking about how each individual can add something cool to the group, can be listened to, can be included in conversations, make sure that you have as much transparency as possible. Once you start thinking like this, that it isn't about your ideas winning out, but it's about the best idea getting into the game. And the best idea might come from another source, or the best variety of an idea might come from another source. So at a fundamental level, stop thinking about it as a conflict. Start thinking about it as a team. And if you really still want to be competitive, it can be a team sport. You're working together on a team. Everything must come together. But you shouldn't be looking at it as combat, as something that you've got to win. Because ultimately, what we all want is the best ideas getting in the game and the game being as awesome as possible for all the players out of there. So take it out of the arena. So the second I call the quest for the question. And this is a deceptively simple one, but is honestly at the core of probably a good 80 to 90% of all creative conflict that I've ever witnessed in large teams or in group settings, is usually because people are actually answering different questions at the same time, or seeking to solve different problems at the same time. So what does this mean? Let me give you an example. And this is about perspective. And one of the best designers that I've worked with at Blizzard is a gentleman named Matt Goss. He works on the Overwatch team, and he had a great habit whenever we're in creative discussions of if things are going off the road or derailing, he often stops and he gets people to ask, hey, what question are we answering now? What problem are we trying to solve? To kind of regroup people. Because what you'll often find in those settings is different people are coming at a problem from a different direction and maybe a different angle. And you can make a practical example where, say, you're trying to create a new a new physics engine. Just make an example. You're trying to make some new element of your physics engine, and the designer, really wants to allow players to push over crates and thinks that's cool. And the gameplay engineer thinks that's awesome too. But the engine programmer is really worried about the number of assets that'll create when the object shatters and what the load that'll have on the engine. And so as soon as those people start discussion, the engineer's thinking about it from a load perspective and from trying to solve a technical problem. And the gameplay designers, and they're thinking about it from a cool factor of how cool will it be. And those two things might not meet. They might both want the ultimate goal of making the thing happen, but they're coming at it from very different ways, which if you're not listening to each other carefully, you can actually end up be trying to solve a different problem at the same time and then talking across each other or being their conflict for no reason. It can happen in systems discussions of, you're trying to do something that attracts new players to your game or attracts a certain demographic of players to your game. But if you don't define what that demographic means, you might say to your engineers or your gameplay designers, okay, we need to attract more casual players, or the aim of this game, one of our design pillars is to attract casual players. But if one group and the other group have different definitions of what a casual player is, you're going to start to hit roadblocks along the way. So it's always a great habit when you start to see conflict in a meeting or in a discussion, or where people really aren't aligning, to stop, pull things back, and just kind of go, hey, what question are we solving here? You know, especially in big complex games, because one problem might have led to another, and now suddenly half an hour into the discussion, you're actually talking about solving problems way over here, which have nothing to do with the original problem that you started with. So just that simple motion of taking a step back, even if it's mentally for yourself, of kind of going, what question is being addressed here? What problem are we trying to solve? And is everyone in the room trying to solve the same problem? To kind of loop back and align, make sure that you're aligning the questions and answering the same questions when you're in a discussion. Because like I said, that's not always easy. And sometimes that can be difficult, but it's a great technique for just taking a pause and going, wait, what problem are we solving here? Okay, so on to the third one. And I call this one walk a mile. And what I mean by this is walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I love this, but smart people say dumb stuff all the time. And why is this important? Well, this is important because a lot of the time our brains react to the dumb stuff, not the smart person. And when I say walk a mile, what I mean is walk a mile in their shoes. Think of their perspective. A lot of the time when you're a younger designer or you're starting out in your career, I'd say 99% of the time, you're reacting to the proverbial, as it says on the screen, the dumb stuff that was said. Someone said something and your brain goes, well, that's dumb. I don't care. I don't agree with that. That's nonsense. And as you grow older and start to have more perspective, what I've found is when a smart person that I know and respect, that I'm working with, that I know has great knowledge and great experience, or is really talented and really smart, when they say something that my brain goes, well, that's dumb or that's wrong, that instantly intrigues me. I want to not focus on the thing that was said, but focus on why they said it. And if you start to do this, you'll notice something really interesting, is that a lot of the time it's relating to the previous question. It's about the fact that the people have different information, or they're trying to solve a different problem, or they're thinking at a level above you. They've gone beyond the question you're asking, and kind of they're trying to solve a wider question that might also solve your question. And train your brain not to react to what was said, but why it was said, and try and understand that, well, okay, that person, I really respect that person. They're awesome. I work well with them, but a good portion of the time, they're going to say something your brain doesn't agree with or doesn't think is right. And here we're working against our brains sometimes, especially when you're putting forward ideas and then other people are putting forward ideas, because we have these kind of cognitive biases that are kind of part of the chemistry of our brain, where we don't want to be wrong. We don't want to lose face. And our brains are going, no, you must be right. You must win. Your idea must come out. We talked about it at the beginning, conflict, And so this is about training your brain to stop again and kind of take that pause and think about the other person's perspective. Where are they coming from? What are they doing? Especially when things get more heated. Why are they angry? Sometimes just stopping and kind of going, hey, I can see you're getting passionate about this. Can I ask why? Why is this so important? And it might be because, they've had a frustrating conversation with someone else on the same topic the previous day that you knew nothing about. And to them, they're frustrated because this is rehashing a conversation they've already had to have 3 times with 3 different people. But that's not on you. But if you don't stop to think and ask, those kind of things can just slip past. And all you're taking away is, wow, they're angry at me. So whenever that kind of tension arises, whenever your brain kind of reacts to like, well, that's a bad idea, stop and kind of ask why, and trying to be inquisitive and kind of wonder about, oh, okay, well, why is it that, like I said, this person that I really respect is saying this thing that I clearly think is wrong. Okay, convince me. talk it out. Maybe even as a mental exercise, take their point of view as 100% correct and try and reverse engineer the ideas why they think that. Not necessarily because it's going to change your mind or make your idea invalid, but just as a mental exercise for like, oh, okay, I can see where they're coming from. They've got this and that. Okay, this is good information. So try to avoid knee-jerk reactions, walk a mile in their shoes, try and seek other perspectives when you are in creative conversations. Okay, so moving on to the fourth one. And this is about feedback. And I call this as that give permission. Because feedback is, you'll hear feedback kind of touted around a lot as really important to every kind of collaborative situation. Feedback is awesome. It's amazing. It's a gift. You've got to give feedback all of the time and take it all of the time. And that's true. Feedback is amazing. It is a gift. But there are good and bad ways to both solicit, give, and receive feedback. And for me, some of the really easiest, simple adjustments you can make personally to make it easier to give and receive good, useful, constructive feedback is pretty simple. And I'm going to give you an example. So I have an idea and I've been working on it, and maybe I put together a prototype and I'm really excited about this prototype. I'm like, oh, this is great. This is going to be awesome. And I want to go get some feedback from someone. So if I go to that person and I go, oh my, okay, come over here. Look, this is great. I've been working on it all week. I really think this is going to be an awesome addition to the game. Or this is going. What do you think? Okay, so that's one way I can ask for feedback. How do you think someone's going to react to that? They're going to be swayed by your positivity. They're going to see that you're clearly very passionate about it. And they're going to maybe hedge their feedback if they have negative feedback, because you're clearly excited and passionate. And maybe they don't want to ruin your day, or maybe they don't want to rain on your parade, or maybe they're just being nice. And out of no ill intention, you might not get the feedback you need. So think about it with a different approach. Think about, you go to someone and you've been working the same thing, you're just as passionate. But when you go to ask for feedback, you can go, hey, do you mind coming over and take a look at this? It's a first draft. It's early. I'm not sure, I'm excited about it, but I'm worried that I might have missed something, or, there might be some some facet of this that might not fit. What do you think? Totally different, right? That's a totally different approach. And you're going to get a totally different answer from that person. You're giving them permission to be negative, to be critical. You're giving them permission to be honest. And honesty is that's where you start to build trust. Because if you think about what you just said in that second approach, it really opens you up. It's a vulnerable move. You're kind of like, you're taking off that developer armor that we all build up to make sure that we can do this. And you're kind of opening it and saying, hey, here's my designer heart. And you can take a shot at it if you want. If there's something I need to hear, I want to be able to hear it. Because we build up all this armor. We have so many, pressures that come at us. The desire to do well, the desire to please others. People suffer from imposter syndrome or don't think they're good enough to do the job when actually they are. We have all of these defenses that we throw up, that we put between us and getting good feedback from other people. And so I think that's really important. One of the best diffusers of that, and I've seen great designers use this a lot, and they'll start a conversation. You're in a brainstorming meeting, and they'll start a conversation with, okay, this could be a really terrible idea, but, and then they say their idea. And if you think about what that achieves, it's a really simple thing. You're starting off from a point of view saying, I think this might be terrible. So everyone that heard that has permission to agree that it's terrible, and tell me why it's terrible. Because in getting to the meat of it, you might find that, oh, actually there's there is a nugget of cool in there because, again, going back to the previous, it was a smart person that said that. So even if they think it's a bad idea, they're just voicing it to kind of throw it into the room and throw it into the mix. But it's a great way of getting people to be honest again, because right up front, you have admitted this could be terrible. I don't care. I'm not going to be precious about this idea. It's just a cool idea that came to me that might be terrible, but let's talk about it. You've given permission to the room or whoever you're talking to kind of be more honest and build more trust with you. And then the second part is receiving feedback. And I think the most important thing with receiving feedback is really just to listen and not react to those defensive walls that we talked about, that we all have, that you might want to react to, where someone starts to give you feedback. And the most common way that I see this manifesting in younger designers is someone starts to give you feedback and the designer instantly interrupts, kind of like, oh yeah, we thought about that. We tried that in version 2. We're now on version 5. You know, they're kind of dismissing and shutting down the feedback because they feel they've already treaded that water and they don't want to rehash the conversation for themselves. But remember, receiving feedback is not just about you. It's about the person giving it. And I'll tell you why that's important, because you might miss something. Because if you shut someone down, 30 seconds into them giving you what might be a long piece of feedback because you think you've talked about it already and it's old news to you and you don't want to have to rehash it, if you stop them, for all you know, 60 seconds in, they might take a left or a right and go into totally different territory and then start giving you feedback that you haven't heard, because giving you the feedback they started from the same point as you. They went through some of the same first iterations as you mentally when they're giving you this feedback. So it's quite common that you might have already tried some of the stuff they're suggesting. But then they might go off on a brilliant tangent. They might go off and mention something related to the design and the feedback that you're like, wow, we hadn't thought of that. And if you shut them down at the beginning, you won't hear that. You won't get to that point, because people are just like, oh, okay, I guess they don't. I guess they've covered it. So listen, let people finish. Let people get through all of their feedback before you feel the need to do that kind of knee-jerk reaction of, we've done that already. We've thought of that. It's all covered. Let people finish, and you never know where they might end up, because some of the most beautiful accidents and feedback and design come from those conversations where it suddenly takes a hard turn and ends up in unexpected space, and you're like, oh, I genuinely hadn't thought of that. That's why we want feedback. So you want to be able to put it in a place where you can actually hear it out and get to those cool ideas. Okay, so feedback is important, but it's about how you give feedback and how you receive feedback. You want to get the most from that feedback. So the final one, and this is the hardest one, and it's titled pretty simple, be better. What do I mean by this? And what I mean by this is kind of a culmination of all of the other things that I'm talking about. And this stuff is hard. We talk a lot in the games industry about very hard technical skills, a lot. Can you master Unreal? Are you a great C++ engineer? Can you handle programming render code? As a designer, can you design the hardest games or solve the most complex problems? We talk a lot about technical skills. But honestly, this is a people business. And games are only as good or as bad as the people that make them and the opportunities that they get to resolve all these kind of conflicts that we have talked about in this presentation, and be better, resolve them. And when I say be better, what I mean is like, try and take the higher ground. Be the person that tries to find the positive solutions, that is willing to pause in a meeting and pull people back, rather than the one that reacts to it. Now, you can't change everybody. We've all worked with people and will continue to work with people that don't do any of the things I've mentioned in this presentation. And in fact, usually some of them, even you get the feeling they take delight in being the opposite, and being passive aggressive or displaying their power, or whatever they think that is. Those people won't really be successful in the long term in this industry, because this is a people industry. And we need to get along with each other and work well with each other. And you want to work, you want to set a good example. Even when it's hard, you want to find ways, to constructively call people out, or don't be afraid to stop a meeting in which toxic behavior is happening. Call a halt to it. Just like, hey, I don't think this is productive. I don't think this is constructive. Let's go cool off. Try and be the better person and give yourself to the process kind of unconditionally. It's not about, like I said earlier, winning or losing. This is about making the workplace a better place for all of us and taking the personal responsibility to make that happen, and kind of recognizing when we get triggered. I do it all, no matter how well I train myself, there'll still be times when someone says something and it's just my red button and I react, and I'm kind of like, oh, okay, no, let's take a step back. This isn't constructive. Whether it's let's go away and cool off and come back at this tomorrow. And you'll notice over time, the more that you do this, the better a reputation you start to get for being someone that people like to work with, because they feel heard. You listen to feedback well. You avoid tension by using these techniques. Can really help you mitigate potential confrontation and potential tension in meetings and all of those kind of things. So it's a really helpful tool to be able to make yourself a better developer and make yourself a developer that collaborates better. Because honestly, this is the true magic for me of what we do, is that everyone brings a unique perspective to games. There are certain things that individuals will come up with that, in a certain flavor of that no one else might come up with in that scenario. All these unique perspectives, and our games are better when each of those perspectives are supported and brought into the group and everyone feels heard. And yes, games are not a complete democracy. You'll never get to make everyone's perfect game in any team setting. But as long as everyone is listening to each other and at least hearing the ideas, you will make your teams better. And try and hold yourself to that. Try and, be the better person, as it were, and constantly be trying to improve and adapt how you interact with people as a personal goal, regardless of what your company goals are, the team goals. As individuals, each and every day, all of us can just try to be a bit better. We can try to be a better collaborator, or a better boss, or a better teammate. Whatever we do in our own small ways, if we're constantly trying to be better, we can make the work, the work culture in your studio or on your team better than it's ever been before. So, on screen, there we go. Just to recap on our five kind of hints for how to do this better. 1, take it out of the arena. Don't fight over ideas. Don't use confrontational and combative language. Quest for the question. Kind of align. Make sure everyone is aligned and chasing the same goal, and everyone should be answering the same question when you're problem solving. Walk a mile. Like I said, smart people say dumb stuff all the time, and that's totally okay. And you should be trying to understand these other perspectives. Give permission. Frame feedback as a positive, and give others permission to be critical, and figure out how to filter the feedback that you receive constructively, so that you're not making people feel unheard. And lastly, kind of combination of all of these, try and be better. Try and improve and adapt and work through to mitigate negativity through kind of more positive problem solving techniques. And my final thoughts is, this analogy, this metaphor of, this is a battery that's inside of us. The last thing I would say is, practice good battery care. And what I mean by that is also look out for yourself. Don't work excessive hours. Don't crunch unless you can avoid it. If you have any influence over those types of things, try and create a company culture that does not endorse working long hours or, having a bad work-life balance. You have a personal responsibility to take care of yourself and your own battery too. And, at the very beginning, when I said, every single person, every single interaction is either a positive charge or a negative draw from this battery, that also goes for yourself. I want you all to go away from this thinking about, those times when you think, oh, I beat myself up over that. Try not to do that. We have enough problems in the world, and there'll be enough things trying to draw from this battery, especially right now. I would love to have been doing this presentation from a stage in Lisbon, but we're here. It's, we have a worldwide pandemic that we're currently trying to deal with. And, there's always going to be these kind of challenges to life. Hopefully it's not always a pandemic, but, there's always something that's stressing you. There's always something in your life. So try and practice good battery care. Look after yourself as well. Don't be afraid to give yourself some positive reinforcement. Replay something you made and go, you know what, that's good. I'm proud of that work. Because that can be important too. Because like I said, we have all these draws, all these people, all of these things, all of the, life itself is all drawing potentially negatively, kind of drawing power from this battery. You shouldn't be adding to that yourself where you can avoid it. Try and be a more positive influence on your own battery as well as other people's. So that's about it for the presentation. This is something that is, hopefully you can tell, is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. And I believe that we could all do that a little bit better on a daily basis to be able to create more creative, collaborative spaces where you genuinely enjoy this pretty awesome job that we have of getting to make games. And hopefully, some of this has been useful to you regardless of your profession. I think there are some cool takeaways here that are helpful to pretty much any creative or technical professional and their teams. And with that, we have time for questions, I believe.
Yes, we do, Craig. Thank you so much for the talk. It's very inspiring, very insightful too. And by gauging the chat messages, I can see that the audience also found it that way. So we have a little bit of time for questions. And right off the bat, we have one from Afonso Carvalho, who asks, I really like listening that there's more to this than just hard skills. However, those still play an important role to deliver a good game or product. So could you tell us a bit of what you do behind the computer? Also, great talk. Really like that.
Personally, so I currently serve as a principal designer at Blizzard Entertainment, like I said, working on World of Warcraft. And World of Warcraft is a game very close to my heart. I played it well before I worked for Blizzard as a player of MMOs, and then to get the chance to work on it all these years later is a fantastic privilege. We still have millions of fans all around the world playing the game every day, over well over 15 years now, which is an amazing achievement. And yeah, so I'm currently principal designers at Blizzard are kind of, our role is as experienced old hands, as it were. Usually we will oversee a set of features for an expansion, and we will help guide the team that's working on those spaces to kind of see it to fruition. So for example, in our latest Shadowlands expansion, I had two main areas of responsibility. One, I worked on the capital city called Oribos, which is the location where the kind of central location in the expansion space. And that involved working with artists and designers to create the space and populate it and give it life. And then also on what we call our Covenant Sanctum features, which were a back-end progression system for cosmetics and kind of to give players long-term goals in the game. And literally dozens, if not more, designers work on all these things. So my role is much more kind of like a supervisory role in kind of doing standard leadership, making sure designs from all the things we talked about, kind of making sure people are up to date and involved and kind of have a voice. Those things are very important to us at Blizzard. Technically, I've done a bit of everything down the years. When I worked at smaller studios like Funcom, you did a bit more jack of all trades. I can probably write code if you want me to, but it would be bad. I have done small parts of animation and art, but primarily I'm a designer by trade. So working on game systems and design and a little bit of writing here and there, but largely game design.
Well, I actually have a personal question that came up to mind while watching. You spoke a little bit about company culture and how important that is to develop, to foster healthy work-life balance, but we see more and more crunch taking up space in game design, which is something that obviously we don't like to see. What do you think are the causes of that, or and a bit of the repercussions of having crunch so predominant?
Yeah, I mean, I have very strong opinions on this. I kind of always have, going back a long time. I think crunch is counterproductive. Uh, it may feel right at the time, and I think it's usually a sign of, I don't want to say poor, but sometimes inexperienced leadership or management or short-sightedness, whether it's for short-term financial issues, which is a real resource issues are a real primary cause of some of this. But it's a complex issue. Many things go into it. But I think what I advocate at a fundamental level is I will argue anyone as long as they want that it is counterproductive. People burn out. Crunch in limited fashion can be okay as a very short-term scalpel to fix a very specific problem. Like, oh, we broke something, we have to fix it. We need that. To me, that's relatively okay. And we have some, almost all the teams I've worked on have some form of that as we get late in the day where we have to go in, and we don't want to. We're always working towards. So when it comes to company culture, I think that's what's important, that the company's leadership acknowledge that crunch is detrimental, and that while we may have to do it on occasion in limited fashions, we want to minimize it absolutely wherever possible. And ideally, we want there to be none. And if you set yourself that goal as a company culture and actually act towards it and make sensible decisions, because then that informs scoping decisions, it informs launch windows, it informs funding, especially for smaller studios. Hey, if we really want to do this without crunch, we need to be realistic with ourselves, and we need to go get more money. We need to have more funding because we need an extra 3 months of development time. Because that's usually, early, especially in smaller studios, that's often the cause of the crunch is, hey, we've got this game to finish and we don't have, we have no more money. We're if we don't launch in this window, so we only have that time. So we have to they think they have to fill that time. I would argue even then that actually it's counterproductive because you make more mistakes when you're tired. The human body can only support that for a very limited amount of time. From experience, any more than 2 or 3 weeks, and you're in counterproductive territory. You will be making more bugs.
The kind of thing where it feeds itself because you're being counterproductive. You have more crunch.
It feeds itself. So, pull back, don't do it. Set the goal to have zero crunch with the understanding that maybe you'll have some, it's key moments, but work towards, no, we don't want any. I'm very proud to be part of Blizzard Entertainment. Blizzard do a lot of work on that front to try and minimize the amount. We're not perfect. We still have to crunch on occasion. But compared to some of the stories you hear, it's nowhere near as, bad as the worst cases that you hear about. But that's because the company has set it as a goal. Senior leadership has bought into crunch is bad for our people. We want to minimize it wherever possible. And if you get buy-in at the highest level, that can trickle down.
Well, we got time for one more question. Madalena Silva asked something that is related to what you talked about today. How do you deal with creative block?
How do I deal with creative block? Personally, I studied film way back. They didn't have computer game courses when I was young. And I studied creative film and creative writing. And how I usually get past creative block is actually a little technique I was taught by a professor, 20-something years ago now, where I do random activities, where, like, say you want to you set yourself just to get out of the block. I'll say, okay, I am going to write a poem, and the only words I can use are the song titles of the first 20 songs on my random playlist on Spotify, where you get random building blocks, which you have no control over. And then you have to make something from them. Because often writer's block comes from that, or creative block of any kind comes from that, I don't have any good ideas. And I can't make anything work. And so to get past it, create an exercise where the parameters are defined for you. And then do that. And it's not related to the work you've got to solve, but you'll often find that just getting those creative juices flowing again and realizing you can make something out of nothing, literally nothing in some cases, can be a really powerful way to snap yourself out of a creative function.
All right, thank you, Craig, for the amazing presentation and for taking the time to answer your questions. We have no more time for questions.